Boker Tov, welcome this morning, all who are gathered from places near and far. We are joined this morning by people who have joined us, our members, many family members of our members and guests who have registered from over a dozen different states around the country. We welcome you all. Each of our services, while focusing in on the essence of the core liturgy and themes of these holy days, has also echoed the style of the different kinds of services that we would regularly offer in a more typical year. Different members of our congregation have their preferred service style, and rather than trying to combine them all within each service, we've instead crafted each individual service of the day with an eye to maintaining the integrity of one mode in particular. Last night, the shape of our Kol Nidre echoed the creative service that Lisa and I have been leading in more recent years, and this morning we have cast the service in the style of a more traditional a cappella service. We hope that you will find much that is familiar and will pray along with us. Our choice of readings and ionim reflect the continuing theme that we've set for Yom Kippur, the exploration of the prophetic voice. This theme will be most broadly explored in the sermon, which will come at the end of the morning. But we begin with morning blessings.
When I sort through the layered texture of what clutters and claims my spirit, I find you, deepest good, in residence. You shine like a piece of gold inside of me. In that tranquil, secluded district of soul, I discover my true, unblemished nature. Teach me that there is much more to me than just my struggle and my failure. Absorb me in the jewel of your love until I am fully one with your goodness. Blessed are you, Holy One, who has formed the human body with wisdom, an intricate network of channels, vessels, and openings. This wondrous structure and the flow of life within us allows us to stand before you and give thanks. Let us cherish this gift of flesh and blood, honor it as God's creation. Baruch atah Adonai refer chol basar umafli la'asot. We praise you, Holy One, for wondrous acts of creation and healing.
Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorai. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorai. Elohai neshama shenatata bi Elohai neshama shenatata bi ויתקדש שמי רבה. אמן. למד יפרח חירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל. בגלה בזמן קריב וימרו. אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי תקודשה בריחו לילה ולילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא וימרו
Those who dwell as scientists or laymen among the beauties and mysteries of the earth are never alone or weary of life. Whatever the vexations or concerns of their personal lives, their thoughts can find paths that lead to inner contentment and to renewed excitement in living. Those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. There is symbolic as well as actual beauty in the migration of the birds, the ebb and flow of the tides, the folded bud ready for the spring. There is something infinitely healing in the repeated refrains of nature, the assurance that dawn comes after night and spring after winter.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Eloheinu, melech haolam, yotzer or uvarei choshech, oseh shalom, uvarei et hakol.
Hineni, behold, I stand ready to listen and learn, to embrace in thought and deed, to proclaim with a whole heart the sacred unity of all being.
Baruch atah Adonai, abocheh b'emor Yisrael, Adonai Adonai Elohecha bechol vavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meotecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibartam v'shivtecha v'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech u'shokbecha u'fumecha u'shartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim lelechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hosseiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim li'ot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem.
In an inspiring sermon on the theme of hope, delivered on Rosh Hashanah by my colleague, Rabbi Stephanie Colin, she shares a description of the Stockdale paradox. She shares, it's named for Admiral James Stockdale, who was held hostage during the Vietnam War. Having survived horrible conditions for 7.5 long years, not knowing if or how he'd survive, he was asked what gave him the strength to come out on the other side. And he said, I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted not only that I would get out, but that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into the defining event of my life. But he continued. When he was asked about those who did not make it out, he said, they were the optimists. They were the ones who said, we're going to be out by Christmas. And Christmas would come and Christmas would go. Then they'd say, we're going to be out by Easter. And Easter would come and Easter would go. He said, you must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality. And so it is with us. And the facts are quite brutal. And some of those who won't make it to the other side because they are among over 200,000 who have already died from COVID-19 in this country alone. It wasn't because they didn't think or hope in the right way. But at a communal level, at a societal level, we have to hold on to hope in a better future. Remembrance is a key component of hope in Jewish tradition. A passage back in our Rosh Hashanah Machzor reads, remember the stories of slavery and you will never stop working for freedom. Remember their fear at the edge of the sea and self-doubt will never defeat you. Remember when desperation turned to celebration and you will never let go of hope. Remember the words of the Baal Shem Tov. Forgetfulness leads to exile. Remembrance is the secret of redemption.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, norati חדשה, שיבחו גאולים לשמך, על שפת הים יחד כולם. טובים לכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופדחנו ממך יהודה וישראל, גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
We rise in body or spirit for the opening passages of the Amidah.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufiach tehillatcha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Lekonei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevik Yehulah livnei bneihem, Leman Shemo be'ahava. Zochrenu lechaim, ve'lechafeis b'chaim, v'chodrenu l'sefer ha'chaim, l'sefer ha'chaim, l'sefer ha'chaim.
You may be seated.
Today, we call it by its rightful name, a day of dread, Norah v'Ayom. Welcome, unwelcome visitor, for we want to live in a sunny world where God is love and all endings are happy. But the drumbeat sounds and the words tumble down, and even the angels tremble with fear. For all things are judged, and all things will pass, and life ends in a heartbeat, and death knows our name. At the start of the year, in the season of truth, comes the day of remembrance, for all we forget and all we deny. And we fall on our knees in the depths of our hearts, for we know that the bell tolls for us. The words are old and the language was theirs, but the call is real and the message is ours. Take hold of your life while you still have the chance, for your story will end, and it might be this year, in a way you don't know. Take hold of your life, make things right while you can, and don't miss the call of the day of dread.
And let us give ourselves over to the power of this day. And let us give ourselves over to holiness and awe, and let us calm the voice of dread and fear. And let us submit to the power beyond and within. And let us take the path of sincere return. And let us give ourselves over to the prayer of the heart. And let us feel the pull of righteousness. And let us give ourselves over to the still small voice. And let us awaken to the wholeness of body and soul. And let us awaken to the wholeness of thought and deed. And let us see in the darkness a doorway of hope. And let us give ourselves over to the power of this day.
Ut shufa, ut vila, ut tzedakah, mavirin et
Take a minute to sit and meditate, a minute of silence for personal contemplation, prayers of the heart. Letter to a Humanist. Men and women are the messengers of God. There are neither angels nor emanations, only people like you, in whom God has planted a striving for justice and freedom and peace. Inspiration and dedication and every inward joy are the gifts of God, who makes us equal with equal love and appoints us, every one, God's messengers and workers, to bring another springtime to the world. Listen to your own inner conversation. You will learn that when you work for justice, you are bringing redemption. When you work for freedom and peace, you are praying for salvation. And when you accept and love another person, the Messiah draws near.
The birds they sang at the break of day, "Start again," I heard them say. "Don't dwell on what has passed away or what is yet to be." The wars, they will be fought again. The holy dove be caught again, bought and sold and bought again. The dove is never free. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.
I invite you now to rise in body or spirit as we prepare to sing the closing lines, the folk melody of Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Haneinu v'haneinu, ki ein banu ma'asim. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Haneinu v'haneinu, ki ein banu ma'asim.
We're going to continue now with the Torah service. I'm going to stop sharing words on the screen so that we can just take in the view of the Torah being removed from the ark. If you want to follow along, you'll find words on 255, 256 as we sing some of the opening verses of the Torah service.
In kamacha Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kimasecha, malchutecha malechut kol olamim, umemshaltecha b'chodor v'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed, רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע, וחטא ונקה. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש ונורא שמו. גדלו לאדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו יחדיו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו, רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו, רוממו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו, והשתחוו להר קודשו.
You may be seated. Every year, as I explore the richness of our Machzor, different readings, poems, explanations jump off of the page, things that I don't even recall having noticed before. And for those of you who took advantage of being able to take one of our Machzorim home with you this year, perhaps many of you have had a similar experience. This year, as I turned to the page of introductory commentaries to this morning's Torah reading from Nitzavim, which is Deuteronomy chapters 29 to 30, the words of our colleague in LA, Rabbi Yoshi Zweibach, jumped out at me as core to the message of this piece of Torah that perhaps we need to hear and truly take to heart this year. And he's actually sharing a teaching that has its origins with another rabbi, Eliezer Davidowitz, who I learned happens to be a relative, a cousin of his, who lived from 1878 to 1942. He was murdered at Majdanek concentration camp in Poland, rendering this particular teaching, I find, additionally poignant. And if you are following along in your own copy of the Machzor, you'll find the passage that I'm about to read at the bottom of page 265. He cites one of the verses that is central to the selection that the Reform movement made of this passage for Yom Kippur. I have put before you life and death, blessing and curse, if you and your offspring would live. Rabbi Eliezer Davidowitz, Slovakia, asks the obvious question: is there any person who would choose death? What kind of choice is really being offered here? Wouldn't most everyone prefer life to death, blessing to curse? Here is his insight. There are two ways to choose life. The first way is the I way. If we want, we can choose to think of ourselves first. We can worry about our needs and our desires and our wishes, and only later will we consider the needs and the desires and the wishes of others. But there is another way to choose life, another way to live our lives. This is the you way. Before we act, before we decide, before we speak, we can choose to think how our actions and decisions and words will affect others. We can think about how our behavior will affect future generations, including our own children and grandchildren. A real choice is, in fact, being offered. Do we live in a way that supports life in the broadest sense, or do we live in a way that serves only ourselves, only our own narrow interests? This narrow way, this second choice, ultimately leads not to life, but to death. As we did on Rosh Hashanah morning for our Torah reading this morning, the Torah will be chanted by members whose voices we've heard chanting these words in our congregation for many years. Brothers Eric and David Schomfeld, who grew up at our congregation. Eric and his family are now raising children of their own here. And they were tutored for their bar mitzvah by the third of our readers this morning, Alan Fox. We pre-recorded their chanting of the Torah. And as we did for Rosh Hashanah, we are going to call groups for an aliyah to the Torah, and you may find yourself falling into one, two, or all three of these groups. And if you feel yourself called by the themes of these aliyot, we will invite you to rise in body or spirit at home, join us in the blessings, and receive a blessing at the end of each of these aliyot. For our first aliyah, I want to offer a blessing for resilience. None of us have found these past 7 months easy, and so perhaps this is a blessing that each and every one of us needs. But I know that there are many among us who have really been struggling to maintain their emotional equilibrium. Those who are experiencing depression, those whose spirits have sunk as jobs disappeared and new opportunities continue to elude them. And if you're struggling to hold on to hope, struggling to lift yourself out of the pit and unable to see some of the blessings and possibilities that might still lie ahead, I want to offer you a blessing for emotional strength and resilience this morning. This aliyah is for you. And as I put the blessings up on the screen for us to see, we'll join in with our soloists in singing the blessing before the Torah reading.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten ha'Torah.
Amen. Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Adonai Elohechem, Rashechem shibtechem, Ziknechem v'shodrechem kol ish Yisrael, Tapchem neshechem v'gerecha asher v'kerev machanecha, Mehotei v'secha ad shoev mimecha lavracha, Bivrit Adonai Elohecha uva'alato, asher Adonai Elohecha kureitimcha hayom, L'ma'an hakimocha hayom lo liam, v'hu yehiye lecha le'Elohim, ka'asher diber lach, v'ka'asher nishbach la'avotecha l'avraham l'tzach l'Yaakov, v'lo etchem livadchem anochi, koreit et habrit hazot v'et hala hazot, ki et asher yeshno po imanu omed hayom lifnei Adonai Eloheinu v'et asher enenu po imanu hayom.
And again, we join together with the blessing after the Torah reading.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם אתה בתוכנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Amen. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu. May the one who blessed all of our ancestors who came before us, ancestors who traveled the ups and many downs of life, bless us and remind us that we, like our ancestors, will also experience life with both its ups and its downs. May we not be so filled with melancholy that we cannot find the blessings that continue to be present in our midst. When we feel the impulse to withdraw from the world and from others, may we remember that this is precisely the moment when we need to reach out for connection and seek the help that we need. Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav lived at the end of the 18th century and himself suffered from bouts of deep depression. And he offered the thought, remember, nothing begets wholeness in life better than a heartfelt sigh. May we sigh when we need to, helping to release our anxieties so that we can find our way back to hope and joy again. And let us say, Amen. And so we move now to a second Aliyah this morning, and this is one that we offer every year. The Birkat HaGomel is a blessing recited by those who have survived a life-threatening situation. It could be that we've recovered from an illness or surgery. It could be that we were able to stay safe and well in the midst of high-risk work or situations or journeys. We do not offer this blessing with any sense of special chosenness. We are all too aware that others who may have been through similar things may not have emerged on the other side. Rather, the blessing asks us simply to take stock of the fact that we are here when we might not have been. It's an opportunity, in the words of the refrain to the melody that we will sing in the blessing afterwards, an interpretation of this blessing by Debbie Friedman of blessed memory. It's an opportunity to pause, which is the meaning of the word selah, and give thanks for the blessings and the good that we are able to appreciate with new eyes, which is the meaning of the phrase kol tov, all that is good. For this Aliyah, if this blessing applies to you in an experience that you have had this year, or you wish to offer it on behalf of someone else in your life, please rise in body or spirit to join us for this Aliyah.
Baruch hu et Adonai havarach.
Baruch Adonai havarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai havarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ki ha-mitzvah hazot asher anochi mitzavcha hayom lo niflet hi mimcha v'lo rechoka hi lo vashamayim hi lemor mi ya'aleh lanu hashamayma v'yikachecha lanu v'yashmienu otah v'na'asena v'lo me'ever layam hi lemor mi ya'avar lanu el ever chayam v'yikachecha lanu v'yashmienu otah v'na'asena ki karov elecha hadavar me'od b'ficha u'vilvavecha lasoto.
Bonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet, v'chayei olam ata b'tochenu, baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. And so we want to offer all of you who have arisen for this aliyah, the blessing Birkat HaGomel. We invite you to stay standing, receiving this blessing either for yourself or on behalf of those others that you stood in honor of this morning.
Creator of miracles, mercy, and life, Kotov Selah, protect us from danger and keep us from harm, Kotov Selah, creator of wonders, compassion, and hope, Kotov Selah, bless us with healing, surround us with love, Kotov Selah. May God who is gracious be gracious to you, Kotov Selah. Protect you and bless you and care for you, Kotov Selah. For all you are and all you hope to be, Kotov Selah. We give thanks for all that is good, Kotov Selah, Kotov Selah, Kotov Selah. Give thanks for all that is good, Kotov Selah, Kotov Selah. Give thanks for all that is good. And let us say, Amen.
You may now be seated. And for our third and final aliyah, we want to hold in our hearts all those who are in need of healing. We invite you to take a moment and name out loud friends, family members that you wish to send this blessing to this morning. Let's take a pause to bring those names to mind. And if you have brought some people to mind that you want to send this Mishaberach blessing for healing to, we invite you now to rise to join us for this aliyah.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach,
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Re'ei natati lefanecha hayom et hachayim v'et hatov v'et hamavet v'et hara asher anochi mitzavcha hayom li'ahava et Adonai Elohecha lalechet b'drachav v'lishmor mitzvotav v'chukotav u'mishpatav v'chayita v'ravita u'verachecha Adonai Elohecha ba'aretz asher ata v'shama l'rishta v'im yifne levavcha v'lo tishma v'nidachta v'hishtachavita le'elohim acherim ba'avadataham higadati lachem hayom ki avot ovedun lo tarichun yamim al ha'adama asher ata over et hayarden lavo shama l'rishta ha'idoti v'achem hayom et hashamayim v'et haaretz hachayim v'hamavet natati lefanecha habracha v'haklala uvacharta b'chayim leman tikyeh ata v'zarecha liyavaha et Adonai Elohecha lishmoa b'kolo u'ledov kavo ki hu chayecha v'yorech yamecha lashevet al ha'adama asher nishba Adonai lavotecha liAvraham liYitzchak uLiYaakov lateit lahem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We also send this blessing, this Misha Berach blessing for healing, out to all those whose names we may not know, those who are healing from the impact of COVID-19 on their bodies, those who are undergoing treatments and surgeries for so many other illnesses, who have families and loved ones who are awaiting news of those that they care for. We send this blessing for healing this morning, far and wide, and we invite you to not only sing it with us, to send this prayer for healing out to all those you are thinking of, but also to receive this blessing not only for healing of body, but healing of spirit.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor habracha V'imotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We now prepare to raise and to dress our scroll, and so if you're able, please rise.
Vezot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai v'yad Moshe. Ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai lai lai, ya lai lai lai. Ya lai 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 lai, v'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Nishma v'tomcheha meushar tiracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu
Please be seated.
The vidui, which means confession, is a prayer recited just before Yom Kippur and repeated many times throughout the holiday. We are about to say it. During the vidui, we gently beat ourselves on the chest for each transgression listed. This action serves as a symbolic punishment for our hearts, which are ultimately responsible for leading us to sins of greed, lust, and anger. The power of the vidui prayer on Yom Kippur rests in the fact that only when we are willing and able to verbally express our sins, it is considered that we have finally admitted them. And then, our rabbis explain, God accepts our apologies and forgives us. The vidui includes the Ashamnu, an alphabetical acrostic of different sins we have committed. It is said in first person plural, because while each individual may not have committed these specific sins, as a community, we surely have. And our fates are intertwined on this day of Yom Kippur. In addition, this teaches us that our moral responsibilities go beyond our personal realms. When we see a friend acting wrongly, we are commanded by Torah to privately and politely rebuke him or her. And when we don't, it is considered as if we share in their wrongdoings. So let us speak these words out loud as we join together in prayer.
Dibarnu tofi
Nura,
Keys of Nu,
keys of Nu,
Lots Nu,
Lots Nu,
Marat Nu,
Marat Nu,
Nihat Nu,
Niats Nu,
Sarai Nu,
Sarar Nu,
Avinu,
Avinu,
Hashanu,
Hashanu,
Saranu,
Sararnu,
Kishinu Oref,
Kishinu Oref,
Ay, 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 Rashanu,
Rashanu,
Shichatnu,
Shihatu,
Tiavnu,
Tiavnu,
Tainu,
Tainu,
Titanu,
Titanu. For these sins, our God, we ask forgiveness. The ways we have wronged you under duress and by choice, and harm we have caused in your world consciously and unconsciously.
The ways we have wronged you through our thoughtlessness, and harm we have caused in your world through impulsive acts of malice.
The ways we have wronged you by abusing our power, and harm we have caused in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers.
The ways we have wronged you by giving in to our hostile impulses, and harm we have caused in your world through inflexibility and stubbornness.
The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and harm we have caused in your world by making light of serious matters.
The ways we have wronged you in our routine conversations, and harm we have caused in your world through envy. For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement.
Kulam Slichot Tzilach Lanu Mechalanu Kaper Lanu V'Kulam
We focused inward, narrowing our vision. We were preoccupied with ourselves. We turned our backs on the poor and defenseless. We were contemptuous of the weak. We tolerated violence against children, neglect of the old, exploitation of the innocent. We told ourselves there was nothing we could do. We wasted the resources of the earth. We denied our own responsibility and put it out of our minds. We kept silent when we should have spoken out. We gave in to cynicism and despair. We sought entertainment instead of enlightenment. We were lazy, indifferent, and callous. We forgave ourselves too easily for our failures. We forgot that we always have a choice. For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement.
Open your heart, he said. Open your eyes, see the truth and forgive. I can't, I said through clenched teeth. It's this way, he said. The Endless One made a world wide, wild and chaotic, light and darkness, birthing and dying, joy and sorrow. All of us are enmeshed in good and evil, caught by forces beyond our control. We act in ignorance and confusion, blindly lashing out. But I'm hurt, I said. Listen, he said. You expect order. You think you can exert control. This is the source of your pain. The one who hurt you is trapped, as you are trapped, in compulsion and fear. Know this, he said. All of life, havel havalim, a breath of air, a bubble that bursts in an instant. So learn to live with impermanence. Accept uncertainty, and your suffering will ease. You cannot guarantee security, he said, but you can hold fast to wisdom. Look at the world with new eyes, he said. Let go of expectations, and you will relinquish anger. In their place, love and compassion will blossom, and then the clenched fist of your heart will open, and you will forgive. So we're coming close to the end of our morning service. As is part of the tradition, I have a number of announcements, and we have a couple of special moments to share with you before we come to an end this morning. So hang in there for a few more minutes. But let me take this opportunity, first of all, to highlight some of what's coming up. At the end of this morning's service, we're going to have about a 15-minute pause. We're going to keep the live stream on. You're welcome to keep it on and be with us. We'll open the Ark doors and just have the cameras focusing in on the Ark. I know some of you are coming through the sanctuary later this afternoon to have that moment yourself, but for those who are not or who cannot, that will be a 15-minute period of time for you to just sit and meditate at home with your own prayers with the Ark doors open. And after that 15 minutes, we will be playing pre-recorded this morning's Yom Kippur sermon. And of course, if you would like to have a longer break, you can view the sermon at any time after about 12:15 today, which is when it will appear publicly on our YouTube channel, the CBS YouTube channel that was linked. The link was sent. You can also just search for Congregation B'nai Shalom and look for our logo on YouTube. For those who would like to gather and connect and reflect together during this afternoon, in our email that we sent out to everyone, there is a Zoom link for a 2 o'clock in the afternoon program called Regrets. I've had a few that features some stories from the moth to inspire some conversation and also some music. And additionally, we also posted a link on Vimeo to some short teachings produced by some of the faculty of Hebrew Union College that are teachings about some of the themes and the liturgy of Yom Kippur. So you can access those opportunities to learn and reflect at any time. We hope that many of you will connect with us again at 4:30 this afternoon for a Yizkor service that will segue immediately into a healing service that we hope will bring spiritual comfort and uplift. And then after another short break at about 5:45, we will be moving back over to Zoom for our Ne'ilah and Havdalah service. Just as we did on Erev Rosh Hashanah, this provides us with a way to see each other, to interact in a very special way that we've designed into the service itself to bring an end to this day. And if you have a Havdalah candle, or even just 2 regular candles that you can hold together to bring 2 wicks together, some herbs or spices, some wine or juice, then we encourage you to assemble that as a Havdalah kit to participate with us at the end of the day. And if you have a shofar, and that includes the toy shofarot that we distributed to all of our Eitz Chaim students, please have those to hand too. We will actually have an opportunity to hear you later on today. Just looking ahead briefly, this Friday we are already at the beginning of Sukkot. There will be an abbreviated Shabbat service from 6:45 to 7:15. Kaddish will be said then. And then at 7:30, we are hosting a very special Interfaith Sukkot program on Zoom. It's sponsored by the Central Massachusetts Connections in Faith, which we helped to found. We'll celebrate Sukkot together. There'll be a little bit of a teaching around some core ideas of Judaism. And then we will have an opportunity to be in small group breakout conversations, one of the hallmarks of Connections in Faith, to sit with others of different faith traditions and learn about each other and be in conversation. We have, I think, over 50 people already registered, and many more I know will do in the days leading up. So please, you do need to pre-register because people are coming from so many communities to preserve our Zoom room security. You must pre-register to have access to that program in the evening, and the links have been sent. And then a week later, we are doing 2 things to make Simchat Torah as special as we can this year. The Friday night service, I'll be here. We're going to try and bring some experience of our scrolls to you. We're also going to have an opportunity to hear Torah chanted and learn Torah from a good number of our Bar and Bat Mitzvah students who have celebrated over these past 7 months in extraordinary circumstances. And they have a great deal to teach us. So I hope you'll join us for that Friday evening service. And then Saturday evening at 7 o'clock, a joint program with Emmanuel Sinai of Worcester. We'll make Havdalah, and then we are welcoming in, all the way from Chicago via Zoom, poet Stacy Zissuk Robinson, who is a much published poet, particularly within the Reform movement, who's just written a new book of poetry for every parsha of the book of Genesis, and she will be sharing not only her poetry, but some of the passion and the thinking that drives her poetry. And she's just wonderful to learn with and listen to. So we've sent out links for that, and we will continue to publicize that. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our temple president, Stephen Goldstein. I'm going to leave Stephen to tell you something about himself, but I want to share this with you. For many years, Stephen has overseen all of our sound, tech, and computer needs at the temple, and it's a labor of love for him. No one could have foreseen when he agreed to step into the role of temple president that he would be doing so at a time when we would be relying on technology more than we ever have to continue to provide community and connection for our congregation. Stephen has been incredible. From his support to B'nai Mitzvah families to create high-quality online services, to setting up Shabbat in the lot over this summer, making it accessible to those who were online as well as those who were present in person, to the quality and fluidity of all that you have seen over these High Holy Days, supported by the very talented Alex Tannenbaum. They have both put in countless hours. And on behalf of us all, I extend our enormous gratitude. After Stephen has shared a brief message with you, we will conclude with a musical moment that you will not want to miss. We wanted to create a feeling of community these High Holy Days in everything that we did. My thanks to Lisa Marcus Jones, to Sharon Brown Goldstein, and Chuck Green for a beautiful community music video with which we will conclude. And so now, over to you, Stephen.
Good Yontif. My name is Stephen Goldstein. It's been my pleasure to meet many of you over the years. For those I haven't yet met, I'd like to share a little bit about myself. I grew up in Newton in a household with a Hanukkah menorah and a Christmas tree. Both my parents are Jewish, but we were pretty secular and we were not affiliated with a temple. At 10, I went to a Jewish overnight camp, Camp Natticook, and that changed the course of my Jewish journey. There I met my future wife, Sharon Brown, one of our Cantorial Soloists. She was Dorothy, and I was a munchkin. Lisa Marcus, our other Cantorial soloist, was there as well, so this isn't the first Jewish community the three of us have shared. Sharon and I reconnected in 1989, got married, and in 2004 joined Congregation B'nai Shalom. I've served on the board of directors since 2009. Our children, Evan and Kayla, attended school here. Sharon's mother, Abby Brown, served as the education director for 13 years. Over the years, this community has been with us to celebrate Simchas and to help us through times of loss. Being a part of this community and its leadership has been one of the most rewarding things I have done in my life. Today, I am honored to be president of our congregation. Congregation B'nai Shalom is fortunate to have smart, caring, and knowledgeable leaders in Rabbi Gurevitz and Rabbi Eiduson, a capable and dedicated executive director in Steve Weiner, and inspiring youth and family educators, Debbie Morin and Cheryl Pouliot. We are strong because of their leadership, and they will be there to help us and our children return to a sense of normalcy. We are fortunate to have a hardworking board of directors who provide their time and energy to oversee the well-being of our congregation. We are strong because of their commitment, and they will help guide the temple until we return to calmer waters. We are fortunate to be able to draw on the talents of so many of you. During this pandemic, you have stepped forward to look after each other and to help guide us in our planning. You have enabled us to respond to the challenges at hand, sharing your knowledge of medicine, law, social work, education, facilities, technology, communications, and so much more. We are stronger because of you, our congregants, our friends, our community. Together we will return to our sanctuary, to our classrooms, to our lives as we knew them. For most of us, this is a year like no other in our lifetime. The leaders and volunteers of Congregation B'nai Shalom have worked hard to understand your needs and to find ways to meet them. From the sudden lockdown and quick establishment of the initial online school, digital Shabbat services, and Shiva Minions, to the creative ways we have found to keep a sense of community and social engagement, with movie groups, trivia night, brotherhood online, and Torah study, to the detailed planning and implementation of online B'nai Mitzvah, Shabbat and the Lot, reopening school for this year, the High Holy Day gift bags you all received, and these High Holy Day observances. These reimaginings have allowed us to continue as a community in a world with COVID-19. We have an amazing finance team who produce a budget that is normally very predictable from year to year, but not this year. A few expenses are down, others are up. Our operating budget comes from tuition, dues, donations, and facility rentals. We are not renting out the building. We canceled our major fundraising event. There are no High Holy Day seating cards for guests. Those three items alone represent more than $80,000 in lost operating budget. This year, like last year, our budgeted High Holy Day appeal goal is to raise $30,000, And if we can overachieve this number, it will start to close that gap in our budget. So this year, on behalf of your community, I am asking for your help. To everyone who is able, please give what you can. We know this is a time of uncertainty. We know people are struggling, and we are here for you if you need help. But we can only be here if you are here for us. So please go to cbnashalom.org, click on the donate button, and help to sustain your community. Thank you. Shana Tova, and may your fast be meaningful.
We return, we return, we return, we return, we return, return again. We return, we return, we return, we return, we return, return again and again to love.
And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. And the sign flashed out its warning in the words that it was forming. And the sign said the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sounds of silence. The words of the prophets, do you hear them? Do you read them? Every year on Yom Kippur, we recite the words of the prophet Isaiah. Why, when we fasted, did you not see? When we starved our bodies, did you pay no heed? Because on your fast day, you see to your business and oppress all your laborers. Because you fast in strife and contention, and you strike with a wicked fist. Your fasting today is not such as to make your voice heard on high. Is such the fast I desire, a day for men to starve their bodies? Is it bowing the head like a bulrush and lying in sackcloth and ashes? Do you call that a fast, a day when the eternal is favorable? No, this is the fast I desire, to unlock fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. It is to share your bread with the hungry and to take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, to clothe him and not to ignore your own kin. This, from the beginning of chapter 58, which is where the Haftarah begins in Reformed congregations, gets straight to the point. The ritual practices of Judaism are empty and meaningless unless they are intertwined with the every single day work of walking on an ethical path that we find in the teachings of Torah. When we declare in words of liturgy our desire to atone for the things that cause harm in our world and to others, the prophetic voice of Isaiah is there to remind us that this is an empty performative ritual act if it's not accompanied by our actions. Abraham Joshua Heschel, great rabbi, describes the prophetic spirit as combining a very deep love, a very powerful dissent, a painful rebuke, and unwavering hope. Reformed Judaism, the specific expression of Jewish life and Jewish values that our congregation affiliates and identifies itself with, emerged during the 19th and 20th century with a declaration that it was time to pick up the mantle of prophetic Judaism again. Too much focus on the minutiae of Jewish law and ritual practice had distracted us from the ethical and moral obligations of everyday life that were deeply ingrained in the Torah and exemplified by the voices of our prophets. Beginning in 1885 and updated several times during the 20th century, our movement put forth a series of platforms that defined the principles of Reformed Judaism. Last updated in 1999, the Statement of Principles included the following. We bring Torah into the world when we strive to fulfill the highest ethical mandates in our relationships with others and with all of God's creation. Partners with God in Tikkun Olam, repairing the world, we are called to help bring nearer the Messianic age. We seek dialogue and joint action with people of other faiths in the hope that together we can bring peace, freedom, and justice to our world. We are obligated to pursue tzedek, justice, and righteousness, and to narrow the gap between the affluent and the poor, to act against discrimination and oppression, to pursue peace, to welcome the stranger, to protect the earth's biodiversity and natural resources, and to redeem those in physical, economic, and spiritual bondage. In so doing, we reaffirm social action and social justice as a central prophetic focus of traditional Reform Jewish belief and practice. We affirm the mitzvah of tzedakah, setting aside portions of our earnings and our time to provide for those in need. These acts bring us closer to fulfilling the prophetic call to translate the words of Torah into the works of our hands. In all these ways and more, Torah gives meaning and purpose to our lives. That was the platform. And it is because of this long-standing principle that defines Reform Judaism and for many decades set it apart from other branches of Judaism that were more focused on ritual practice or more insular issues, that we teach our children here at Congregation B'nai Shalom about social justice as an integral part of their Jewish education. We show them how ethical values found in our Torah can be applied to our homes, our communities, and our country. We take our 10th grade class to Washington, D.C. to learn how to advocate on contemporary social justice issues that impact our lives and the lives of the vulnerable in our society. Issues that are often impacted by what takes place in the corridors of our political institutions. We do not teach them to be partisan, but to recognize that the American constitutional foundation that gives each of us a voice as citizens can be meshed with our Jewish identity and the prophetic call to seek and pursue justice that is foundational to our Jewish faith. Rabbi Barry Schwartz, in his book, The Path of the Prophets, the lens of prophetic history is not power, he says, but justice. The concern of prophetic history is not conquest, but compassion. The heroes of prophetic history are not kings or generals, but visionaries and dreamers. They are the seekers of justice and exemplars of compassion. They are often ordinary people who have moments of extraordinary courage and insight. They are unexpected heroes. Last night, I shared the story of a young woman who was in many ways running away from the life that she had been leading. In the quiet of the Mojave Desert, she found her calling after witnessing what she came to realize was human trafficking taking place before her eyes at a distance. She became an unexpected hero to so many, working to shut down the brothels in LA that were imprisoning women who had been brought to this country through sex trafficking. She tuned in to the prophetic voice calling from within, and she found her calling. She felt the tug, the impetus to respond, and in doing so, she not only transformed her own life, but that of so many others. This morning, I began by presenting the impetus to respond to the prophetic voice that lies at the heart of Reform Judaism. And I want to raise up the examples that are all around us of those who have heard the prophetic voice within, the people in the midst of this very congregation, who exemplify what it means to respond to the prophetic call. Take, for example, our members who have brought their voice and their passion to lift up the urgency of environmental action. With the devastation caused by the fires burning up and down our west coast, and the terrible flooding brought to the south, and the increased intensity and incidence of these events, scientists have long expressed certainty in the human impact on our climate. Those who are advocating and teaching others how to advocate, those who are organizing regionally, who are part of regional groups that are part of their national and international coalitions doing work to help the environment. I see you. Let's take, for example, our members who have bravely spoken out in the face of the growing anti-Semitism that has resurfaced in our country. When we say hate has no home here, we must have the courage to speak up for ourselves as well as for others. We have to educate those who are ignorant of Jewish history and whose ignorance leaves them vulnerable to those who still target our people with their conspiracy theories. Those of you that are using your voice and your passion in this way, I see you. Over the summer, many in our local towns came together for peaceful vigils to offer their support to the work needed to address racial inequalities. Many of us took time to read, to learn, becoming more attuned to our own implicit bias and the white privilege to which many of us, even as Jews, are the beneficiaries. And some have gone further, organizing in partnership with local school districts to address racial bias in our schools and curricula, to work in cooperation with our local police departments, to look more holistically at the ways that we can create safe communities for all. To those of you that are using your voice and your passion to learn more and to continue to speak out against racial injustice, I see you. Then there are those who continue to tirelessly advocate for disability rights, to advocate for your children to have the access to learning that would maximize their potential that so many others take for granted, to advocate for the housing and transportation and caretaker support that would enable more people living with disabilities to maintain their independence and contribute to the workforce as productive adults. We've come some way over the past few decades, but you are continuing to lift up your voices because there is more to be done. I see you. And there are more, so many more. Those who are lifting up their voices to advocate for the safety and equality of those who are LGBTQ, those who are lifting up their voices to advocate for a woman's right to make choices about her own body, those who are lifting up their voices to seek a living wage that provides dignity to everyone who does a hard week's work, and access to affordable healthcare. Those who are lifting up their voices to support the right of the Jewish state of Israel to exist in the face of those whose criticism of her government has morphed beyond legitimate critique and into anti-Semitism in another form. Those who have been working to help the citizens of this country register to vote and ensure that they will have access to the ballot box this November. We have members of this community who are supporting organizations, advocating and acting on all of these and many more. I see you. This is what it means to be a Reformed Jew. Traditionally on Yom Kippur, we hear the story of another rather perplexing prophet, Jonah. Perplexing because Jonah runs away from his task. After being swallowed by a big fish and praying to God, he goes to do what was asked of him, but his message to the people of Nineveh is just one sentence: 40 more days and Nineveh will be overturned. Jonah gets grumpy when the people repent and God forgives and saves the city. For those of us who are still searching for our inner prophetic voice, perhaps because we're overwhelmed by the brokenness that we see in our world, we are Jonah, and Jonah is us. Rabbi Dr. Shmuley Yanklowitz has written a new commentary on the book of Jonah, a social justice commentary. Through close analysis of many of the details of the short story, Yanklowitz raises up many lessons that we can learn about what it takes to raise up our own prophetic voice. He suggests that we might empathize with Jonah, who initially runs in the opposite direction. Nineveh, after all, is described as a great city. Why would it listen to one man? To stand up and speak out against an unjust society can be a daunting task. Yanklowitz reflects, to protest means to publicly declare that injustice and bigotry are unacceptable and that callousness must never be tolerated. Bearing witness and protesting are not just moral acts, but also deeply religious ones, he says. In the Jewish tradition, we are obligated at times to offer tochacha,
which means reproof or rebuke,